Over. Hello, good afternoon. It is day number 1 of the Peralta Online Equity Conference. My name is Inger Stark, and I am part of the Peralta Equity team and also a co-coordinator of the conference. Welcome. A couple of logistics before we start. One is that the captions feature is turned on in Zoom, and there is just a button at the bottom of your screen, and you can toggle that button to turn the captions on or off. We are being recorded, so be mindful of that. I encourage you to participate in the chat. We don't expect our presenters to keep an eye on the chat, but as moderators, we do and can direct questions to her at the end if there's something important. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Marina, Aminy, and welcome.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Thanks for coming here. I know it's a later session, so really nice to see all of you here. My name is Marina Aminy. You might know me in my day job, which is Executive Director of the CVC. Just want to clarify today, I'll be talking about some topics that are not CVC related, so I'm not using my CVC background and all views that represent my own. So that's my initial disclaimer. I'm going to go ahead and share screen. I do have a PowerPoint, but please don't let it prevent you from kind of jumping in, asking some questions. I would really love for this to be an interactive conversation. And I do want to kind of preface it with saying that if you attended DECHI in this fall semester, like Bob did, he would have heard a version of this presentation before that focused a bit more on technology. Today, I'll be talking about online student support to increase equity and access. So always like to kind of talk a little bit about me in case you don't know who I am. That's my picture. When I was about 5 or 6 years old, I was born in Kabul, Afghanistan. My family came here as refugees. I am a second language learner and an immigrant, first-gen college student. I eventually went on to get my PhD in education from UC Berkeley, about 20 years of education and experience in education, I should say, including some student services, instruction, and leadership, technology, kind of all over the place with that. So, one thing that I've talked about in other presentations you might have heard is just the role that surveillance and monitoring plays in the lives of a lot of our students and in my own family, particularly post 9/11. And I won't get into that today, but that theme of like monitoring and surveillance, I think will come up a little bit. So I just wanted to kind of weave that in and keep a pin on it, and we may return to that as a theme. So what I'd like to kind of talk about some deep questions about student support. What do we believe about our students? What are some of our assumptions that we make when we set up our student services processes or when we participate in whatever role we're in for student services? And what's working, what doesn't work? How do processes impact outcomes? And I'll come back to what this means as well. And then what role do we, and by we, I mean you, if you're a faculty member, if you're an administrator, if you're on reassigned time, if you're a classified member, what role do you play in your institution's structures around student support? So I'm going to kind of ask you to really think through that. And I'll kind of also hold you accountable for your role. And I hope that's okay. And I really want this to be a conversation. And I really want you to feel empowered by some of the questions that I'll ask around that. And I want to start with my beliefs about our students. I think students come in with lots of cultural capital. This is an equity conference, so I know a lot of you are already here because you believe this about our students. My kind of belief about our students extends to thinking that they don't need to be parented. They don't need our, parentalism, or I should say paternalism. They don't need us to control them or patronize them. Those are my core beliefs about our students. And I also feel that we educators are really well-intentioned. Even when we really mess up and we do something that doesn't work out for our students, it's because it's well-intentioned and we just happen to be off the mark. We're never ill-intentioned. So everything I say today, please keep that lens. And then, student support can be this powerful means for supporting and enabling student success. And also there's lots of funding for student support at most of our colleges. So how we're utilizing that can put us in a position of strength and power. And then our processes, unfortunately, despite our best intentions, can be used to control, surveil, or burden our students. I do believe that that is occurring, and that's something that I really want to dig into. And these are not going to be comfortable conversations. I'm going to give you some examples. I'll keep all the colleges anonymous, all the examples anonymous, but I will share some uncomfortable examples, and I hope that you're okay with that, and I hope we can kind of dig in. And then, the people, what I've kind of noticed in talking to my colleagues in student services is that the people offering these services do not always feel like they're the decision makers. There's a lot of lack of feeling empowered, like, well, I just work there. I didn't decide to do that. I hear a lot of that. So we're going to kind of confront some of that as well. So, you're going to hear about paternalism or parentalism kind of as a synonym. It's creating kind of well-intentioned barriers for our students because we think it's going to help them. And it's wanting to do kind of the best for the students, wanting to teach them a lesson. But oftentimes this paternalistic attitude leads us to create processes that negatively impact our students. And my examples, I hope, will really outline that. So let's jump right into it. I want to start by saying that student support, particularly for our online students, can be powerful, transformative. A great example are online counseling, tutoring, online DSPS programs, online multimedia, translation software, AI, VR, Zoom. A great example of that is Jessica Lopez. If you are on LinkedIn at all, you may have seen her. She is a current community college student at Coastline. She is a disabled student as well. And she talks extensively about the power of online education and how it's allowed her to have a life and to have a career and to make money and to support herself. And so her example is fantastic. She's also spoken at some of our events at the CVC. So there's lots of good to be said. And again, I want to remember that as I give you some of the missteps as well. So pandemic and post-pandemic support. Obviously, the pandemic has been a gift for student services. We're doing stuff online that we never did before, which is online access to counseling, tutoring, admissions and records, disability student services as well, intake processes. Online library services and ZTC are really opening doors for students who can't come to campus, purchase books, make the trip here. Digital access to laptops and hotspots, Wi-Fi parking lots. These are all things that you all did in your respective colleges post-pandemic and during the pandemic. Offering fully online degrees and certificates, again, to enable students who cannot come to campus because they're disabled, because they have childcare issues, because they don't own a car, for all of those reasons. So those are all the good things happening. I'm going to give you 4 examples of maybe some missteps that occurred with online student support. And we're going to talk through kind of process. We're going to talk a little bit through like who's involved. And then I'm going to ask your help to fix it. Okay, so I'm not just going to be like, this was a disaster. I'm going to say this was a disaster, but help me fix it. So it's going to be a game of fix it. So that's kind of, I hope that'll be your interaction with this session is you're going to help me fix it. So the 4 examples will be around laptop and device distributions, online counseling appointments, and this is something I personally experienced with my college-age child. A student payment system issue. Again, it's a student services issue because this really involves financial aid oftentimes, and A&R and intake. And then college promise, which is the 2 years of free college that many of your colleges have. So we're going to try to quickly go through a few of these examples. So let's talk about laptops and devices, right? Post-pandemic or during the pandemic, all the colleges were like, oh my gosh, we need to get devices into students' hands. Most of our students don't own devices. They're trying to do these fully online classes on their phones. So, there were some issues we ran into as we tried to set up processes. Normally, colleges don't loan laptops or hotspots. If your college did before 2020, you were in a small select group. Most colleges did not. It was hard to establish need for devices. Colleges were like, well, how do we know that Johnny needs a device, right? How do we get him to qualify for a device? There's this question. The technology department doesn't typically track and get them back from students. Colleges kind of ran into like, well, we don't have a process for this or a system. And then, oftentimes colleges don't have enough personnel or like locations to do the pickups. How do you manage all of this? And then you've got the fully online students, right, who don't even come to campus. How do we manage device distributions for our students? This is a student support issue. So I'm going to give you the example of how one school handled it. So they had an application of interest for loaner devices. So I'll make a fake name for it. Valley View School had, an application said, hey, students, you need a laptop or a device, fill out this form. Let us know you're interested. And then explain if you're in need. Let us know if you have a need. They had to fill out a FAFSA because we want to make sure that it's going to the neediest students. So fill out a FAFSA, the financial aid application. Make an appointment with IT to pick up the device. And they were open Tuesdays and Thursdays at this time because it was a pandemic. Show their, official college ID for pickup, sign a consent form. And then, it was really limited to Chromebooks because laptops are expensive, so understandable. And this led to about 300 device loans at that particular college. So that's one process. Tell me, what did you notice? So I'll pause here, put in chat or unmute and just tell me, what did you notice? Who was involved? How to go? What do you think about that particular process for loan book, for loaning Chromebooks?
Marina, I'm going to unpin you so that you and participants can see each other. Is that okay?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So anybody want to kind of tell me what their observations are? So yeah, FAFSA is a barrier I'm seeing in the chat. Anything else? What about like the applications? Is the application a potential barrier? Yes. 300 is not a number to brag about. Totally right. Too many departments involved, language barriers, a lot of steps. Yes, James, absolutely. So, it's kind of complicated, right? Already it's like a lot of complication for a student to get a device in their hands. So you got it, right? So let's fix it. Let's make it more equitable. So if we take this student's process and we fix it, and when I worked at a college, I was actually in a position where I was in charge of laptop distributions, and I saw some lessons learned. And so some of the lessons learned that I applied to make it more equitable was no interest form or application. Why are we making them fill out a form, right? What this is an additional barrier. Like they need a device to fill out the form. So it's kind of ironic, right? That we're making them fill out a form. Flexibility about IDs. I didn't need to see a school ID. If they had a license, that's fine. Heck, if they just knew their student ID, that's cool. Just bring that on a Post-it note and that's enough, right? And then if your mom wants to come pick it up in your place, great. Multiple varied methods for pickup. We had drive-throughs, we had walk-ins, we had library kiosks. In some cases, I authorize home deliveries to students. Our disabled students were having trouble coming to campus to do a drive-through. They didn't have cars, they couldn't even drive. So coming up with multiple varied methods for getting them into their hands. And I also see Rachel put, Chromebooks are limiting. Yeah. We also had to make at least some laptops available, right? Because some of our content areas, they wouldn't run on Chromebooks, like multimedia courses or heavy, photos and images. It was no good on the Chromebooks. Chromebooks are pretty cheap. They were like $300 a pop roughly. Counselors got involved. So if a counselor learned that, a student was in need of a device, we created a way for counselors to quickly connect with our team to get laptops into those students' hands outside of the processes. Flexibility on non-returns and fees. I wasn't going to be like the IRS and repo their car if they didn't return a $300 Chromebook. The Chromebook depreciates as soon as it's in their hands and it costs maybe $150. So I wasn't super worried about getting it back. What are we gonna, what's the worst case scenario? A student has a device that's older that they're gonna use or give to a sibling. Friendly customer service oriented approaches. We had faculty hand out the devices, not IT staff. So faculty are people that they typically would see, or it would be like staff that they run into, like at the library or the counseling office. So that was nice too. Lots of marketing, including using the LMS, using Canvas to post about it. And we ended up distributing about 2,000 devices. This is a picture of me at distribution, which was cool. It's like in end of March 2020 with my weird mask. So that's the fix. Kind of, again, think about the process that we used here and eliminating all of the various barriers. So let's jump to a second example, but get ready for a fix because I'm going to give you an example, just like Chromebooks, and then I will ask you for a fix. So online counseling. This is a true story, by the way, for my son going to community college. So true story, every bit of it, I promise. So my son was a 12th grader. He was planning to go to a local community college, and it was like April, he was about to graduate and he needed to sign up for fall classes. All right. So cool. He's ready to go. He had a registration appointment for like Monday, April 12th. It could have been a different date, but just I'm using this as a sample. But he had a question about AP scores. He'd taken 3 AP tests. He really wasn't sure, does it cover my English class? Should I sign up for English for my registration date or should I not? And so I was like, as a good mom, trying to empower him, be like, call the department and ask, call counseling, figure it out, become an adult, right? So he called and they had an appointment line and they were like, oh, you have to call the appointment line. So he got on the appointment line and it was an automated message. So there's no human being. And it said, you must call at 8 a.m. on Monday. So in order to make an appointment, you have to call only on Monday at 8 a.m. That's when you can call. And it was Wednesday when he called. So now it's like 2 weeks out before April 12th and it's Wednesday. He's going to wait till the next Monday. So, all right, great. So then Monday comes around and he calls at 8 a.m. Mind you, he's still in high school. So his appointment starts, his school starts at like 8:25. He has to be on campus. He's a high school kid, but that's fine. He calls on Monday, 35-minute wait to make the appointment. So now he's late to his high school class. He's super anxious. He's freaking out. Mom, what the heck's going on? But some more colorful language, right? Because he's 18. And then they finally get through. 35 minutes later, he makes an online appointment. And they're like, okay, but your appointment's Wednesday, April 14 at 3:30 p.m. So that's the earliest appointment that was not during his school time. So he had to take that appointment. Notice it's after his registration appointment. So again, lots of anxiety, still freaking out, have to talk him down off of a ledge, be like, it's okay, you'll be fine, you'll get your classes, it's gonna be cool. And then the day of the appointment, he's like, well, they gave me an online appointment. I can't go to campus. It's too far away for me to drive after school. So he's an online student. There's no Zoom link emailed to him. There's no email. There's no phone call. He's like, oh my gosh, they forgot. I think I did something wrong. I think I missed the appointment. Again, lots of anxiety. 17 minutes later, so his appointment was at 3:30. The call was like at 3:47 or so. We got a call from a counselor. The counselor was like, hey, sorry, my other appointment ran late. I'm gonna, what do you want to talk about? And then he was like, well, I have questions about my AP scores. Can we get on Zoom so I could show you my report? And they said, yeah, no problem. And the counselor hung up and said, I'll email you a Zoom link. It took her 10 minutes to generate a Zoom link and email it to him and for him to get it. So now, it's like closer to 4. He still hasn't talked to somebody on Zoom to show them the report. Finally gets a Zoom link, gets the counselor on, and the counselor could not answer the question and said, I'm not sure about that particular AP test. Let me get back to you. Forgot to get back to him. I had to sort it out and actually call a friend because I work in the community colleges and solve the problem for him, even though I really didn't want to. But at that point, he was ready to just give up and get a job. So this is the experience of our students. They're supposed to be able to get an online appointment for counseling. And by the way, this is a pretty large, well-resourced college. There's lots of counselors working there. So tell me, what did you notice? Who was involved? What worked? What didn't work? And what's the fix? So I see lots of faces of, angry faces, sad faces. Yes. What did you notice? What were some things that just did not work with this? One of the earliest experiences that my kid had with online counseling. Put that in chat or just unmute yourself and call it out. Limited availability, appointments not convenient. Yeah, totally, right? The fact that he had to wait for a Monday morning and that time conflicted with his high school schedule, that it was a synchronous requirement for making an appointment, a long wait on that call as well for no good reason. So, let's fix it. The anxiety was through the roof, and my kid is the more chill of the two kids that I have, and it was really frustrating. And he was like, why did you make me go to community college? This sucks. He was really upset, and I honestly I didn't blame him, and I was asking the same questions at that point. So let's fix it. If we're at a community college and you're working with your team to set up online counseling appointments, these are the sorts of things that we need to ask questions about, right? Because his mom has a PhD in education and works in the community colleges, and he was this stressed out. Imagine if he didn't have parent support. Imagine if his parents were second language learners. Imagine if, he is working to support his family or he's a parent. These are all things that are going to be incredibly discouraging to him, right? So really, again, these are basic things, the ability to make online appointments without calling and being placed on hold. Why don't we have an online portal? I can go to my online portal and make an appointment with my doctor, right? Why is it that I can't? And when I asked this particular college, why don't you? They said, oh, what we find is if students make appointments online without talking to a human, that they're more likely not to show up. So by making them call, it actually decreases the no-shows. So that's like, again, a very institution-centered reason to do this, right? It's better for them to not have no-shows, but it's not better for the students. The ability to make appointments same day or same week. The only same day appointments or same week ones were group appointments that were drop-in, and they wouldn't have given him the privacy to like screen share his documents and his scores. So those did not work, but there was no really opportunity for him to do this. Send the Zoom link in advance if it's an online, online meeting. Like there shouldn't be a Zoom link that shows up later or same day even. Let them have the assurance of knowing that there's a link and there's an appointment. And maybe some automated reminders if it's a week away. Maybe some automated reminders. I get like 70 reminders for my dentist appointments. I don't know about all of you. I get it by text, by email, and then they call me. And then be prompt or let the student know you're running late, 17 minutes, 30 minutes late without any sort of assurance. The student may have just given up and turned their phone off and gone for a walk or gone and done something else. Maybe they're on a lunch break and they really need that appointment during a particular time. So being cognizant of that since they're working. Any other thoughts on this example? I don't want to upset all of you, but these are real life examples. Yes, Rachel's saying that there are calendar functions on every platform. Totally agree. Whatever platform you use, it's there. The technology is there to set these meetings up. All right, I'm going to jump to my third example. I know we only have 45 minutes, but I'm really enjoying your feedback. Continue to do that. All right, College Promise. So for College Promise, if you're not involved in it, it's essentially Assembly Bill 19. It offers free tuition to colleges for the first 2 years. So it's meant to give free college to students. By the way, it's regardless of income. So you don't have to be financially needy to, get it. My kids both qualified for College Promise, even though we don't need it, but it was free to everybody who met the criteria. And so AB 19 funds offer free tuition. And the only two requirements really tied to that legislation is they have to be enrolled in 12 units and they have to complete a FAFSA. So just keep that in mind. The money's there for students to get free college, but these are the two requirements: 12 units, complete FAFSA. So one college, here's how they handled it. They required a counseling course in high school. So the student during their senior year took this course to expose them to the college, which is an interesting concept. There was an interest form in high school to say, hey, I'm interested in the Promise program. Already should be like a red flag for you. Okay, so keep that in mind. And if you notice any red flags, go ahead and put them in chat. They were required to have a 3.0 GPA after the first semester to stay in the program. Okay, so in order to stay in the College Promise program, they had to keep a 3.0 GPA. It required at least 3 units of on-campus classes, 1 required counseling appointment per course to make sure, per term, to ensure that they're like on the right path, right? We don't want them just taking any courses nilly-willy. Required orientation and family night because we want to meet the family. We want to make sure everyone's engaged. Required return of rented textbooks and devices, and then required clearance of any holds, like library holds, to keep their aid. So anything you notice here about this particular model for the College Promise? Was that college appointment scheduled like the last one? So that's a great question, Inger. So yeah, if this institution is handling their college appointments in a disastrous manner, and then you're requiring it of students, you're already disadvantaging those students, right? So lots of barriers here. Again, remember what the requirements are for this legislation. The law only requires 12 units and FAFSA to get the cash, but this college chose to incur all of these other requirements for their College Promise program, which allows for local control, and this was their decision. Family night also marginalizes students. Yeah, foster children may not have families and so forth. The 3.0, yeah, James, the 3.0 was kind of upsetting to me as well. I actually had the opportunity to ask a question of the person in charge in this particular school. And I was like, why did you make all these requests? Like, why the 3.0? And that person, who was a higher ranking administrator, said something like, well, we need to teach the students a lesson that there is no such thing as free money. We want them to learn to be happy and responsible and grateful for the money that we're giving them. So having a 3.0 requirement helps them to appreciate the money that they're getting. which again reeks of paternalism, right? It reeks of wanting to teach lessons and reeks of like, wanting to control and like teach them something and expecting them to be like babies and like we're taking care of them like parents. So let's fix it, right? Kind of how do we make it more equitable? Let's make it more equitable. Don't require opt-out. Oh, it looks like I went on the wrong. Sorry, I think that my slides got messed up. Here we go. So let's make it more equitable, right? No interest form, no extra application. Don't make students prove that they're poor or in need. Let's kind of think about really how we can put the money into the students' hands, because that process that I just went over earlier, that process really requires a lot of personnel, right? You need staff members to make sure that they're meeting all those requirements. You need Excel spreadsheets. You need people to monitor and control them. So let me stop sharing, make sure that my slides are okay. What other kind of suggestions do you have for a fix it for your college promise program? Anyone else want to do that? Get into it? Okay, hold clearances can be troublesome too, unless that process is smooth. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Let me go back here and share my screen again. I think I've got it back on here. All right, we're going to talk next about my last example, all right, which is student payments. So this also involves counseling, financial aid. So let's do that. All right. So, oh gosh, I don't think I am completed here. I'll just talk about it. All right. So the example that I wanted to give was the student payments opting in and opting out. So if we actually talk about ASG fees, how many of your colleges, here we go, how many of your colleges have ASG fees that their students are required to pay or can opt into? How many of your colleges do that? Okay, if you check your student payment system, and this is in student services, what you'll find is that either students can opt in or opt out of those fees, right? So in one particular district, students used to opt in to that fee, which is like $12 or $19, not a lot, but they changed it to opt out because ASG was like, not a lot of people are opting in. Like, we don't have a lot of money for activities. Can we make it opt out? And the school was like, sure, that sounds like a good idea. So then they made it opt out. What that did was it created a domino process that really created inequities for our students. So financial aid does not cover ASG fees in most cases. So keep that in mind, all right? So if you're a student that is high need and you get financial aid for your units and all your other fees, but you have this little opt out that you missed and you forgot, and that $12 is now on your student payment record, you now have $12 outstanding that you can't pay, that you forgot to pay, that your financial aid did not cover. The problem with that is students with unpaid fees on their accounts have holds placed on their registration, and students with holds cannot sign up for classes during priority periods. So what do you think is going on with these opt-in, opt-out? What do you think is a problem with this opt-in, opt-out situation? Anybody want to kind of talk about that? So the problem at this particular school is that about 1,500 students didn't qualify for registering. So their registration period came and went, and they had blocks, and the college was like, looks like it's a problem. Something's happening and our students are not registering for their classes. So around 1,400 students had holds placed on their accounts, were ineligible to register for classes. And the school was going like, gosh, I wonder what's happening. Our enrollments are going down. And then suddenly they were interested. So the college actually noticed a steep decline that semester, didn't understand why, as the College Promise program was covering 100% of their fees. So the College Promise program was covering their tuition. It was free. They should have been able to get in, but they weren't. And then they realize, oh, it's because they have $12 on their account that's not paid because we decided to opt in instead of opt out. And the CRMs collected all this information and staff were aware of these fees. So what happened again is like this minor decision that was made in student government, again, student services, led to this cascade of effects that prevented about 1,400 students from accessing their appointments because they had unpaid fees on their accounts. And then the college was like, hey, we should probably take care of that. So all of the folks that were involved really were like the technology team that was asked to reprogram and reset it, our A&R teams that were asked to place holds on registration, right? These are all the folks that were involved. The financial aid team that was apprised that these fees were not covered, they all knew about it. And then, the solution was ultimately that the administration decided to change the rules and allow Promise to cover the fee instead of changing it back to an opt-in instead of an opt-out. So I think that those were all very telling sort of reactions. And then Rachel saying it creates more work for staff, gatekeeping for the next semester courses. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Anything that leads to a hold on a student account should definitely raise your eyebrows wherever you are. And you should say, is that necessary? If they broke a beaker in chemistry class and they didn't pay $7 to replace that beaker, why is the library placing a hold on our students' ability to take classes? If they're missing a book, why is that leading to a hold? Anything that's placing a hold is very paternalistic, in my opinion. And you want to take that as a moment to question and ask about it. Inger saying a broken beaker can become a complete impediment. Yes, absolutely. So a lot of the questions that I ask for folks is, why don't we say something, right? As I mentioned, none of these happen in a vacuum. Policies are changed, college promise programs are created, laptop distribution processes are created on committees and work groups. And I always wonder, why don't we say something, right? Why don't we say something? And I often get answers like these. So, well, we didn't make the rules, we're just carrying out, they told us to. And it's often a little bit of self-denigrating language that I'll hear. And it'll be things like, well, I'm just a fill it in. I'm just a A&R staff member. I'm just a counselor. I'm just a dean. I'm just a director. And it's really kind of I don't make the rules. I just kind of had to do it type of thing. We are not the decision makers. They don't listen to us. I brought it up. They didn't listen to us. They kind of did what they wanted. They don't respect us and what we have to say. It's just sort of I didn't decide it. Someone made me do it. I didn't think about it that way. I just kind of went along with it. The last one I really appreciate, when I hear it, because if people are, not really thinking about oh, I didn't think that an interest form is a barrier. I've heard that from people. When I bring it up about an interest form, they'll be like, oh, I have an interest form that I require for devices, for example. I didn't think about it as being a barrier. So I hope that if you find yourself in this last category, that this presentation and kind of some of the examples I've shared kind of spur you to rethink that a little bit. And I kind of created here as a final few words before I stop screen sharing is your to-do list for online student services and really all student services. Whenever possible, remove barriers and requirements. Okay, that includes forms. You don't have to get students to respond to an email. They don't have to come to a meeting, an orientation, a family night, a celebration, required appointments. Anytime these are being required, really we want to ask for, how do you know this will help our students? What's the evidence that this requirement will help students to succeed and complete their degrees on time? If there's no evidence, don't do it. If there's no federal requirement or state requirement by law, why are we doing it? And again, what it leads to is, hiring this group of people to surveil, monitor, and control students. And then avoiding adding requirements to existing policies, like you see colleges doing all the time for the College Promise program. If AB 19 requires FAFSA and 12 units, why are you adding 7 more requirements to these students to get their money? The money was intended for them, and you are creating blocks for them. So require the minimum, and then assume that your students can do it Don't be in a mindset of I'm going to teach them lessons and I'm going to teach them about life and we have to hold them accountable. Get out of this holding accountable mentality and get into we will do whatever it takes to support our students and get them across the line. And that has to be on their terms and what's going to be good for them. Don't parent them, right? Empower them and support them. And then invest in student need, not surveillance and monitoring. Don't hire a team of caseworkers. Don't hire a team of people and give them a cool name like success coaches, right? Because what you're doing is you're taking AB19 money and you're putting it away from the student and you're hiring personnel and you're renting spaces and you're paying for food at celebrations. But that money, the evidence, the research tells us that money will be most beneficial in the student's pocket, paying for their fees, paying for their transportation, paying for their books. That's where you want to put the money, directly to the students, the closest to the students. Don't hire people with money that should be going to the students. That's my main advice to you. And then finally, if you have self-talk around empowerment, if you've got self-talk of well, I'm not in charge and I don't decide it, nobody listens to me, that's the part I want you to hold yourself accountable for. You can see yourselves as powerful initiators, decision makers. You are in this realm, whether you're in instruction, whether you're in student services, whether you're a staff member or director or a faculty member, you have a role and you have power and you have representation. So I really hope that your takeaway for today is that you can use that power and that position to do some good. You can be part of a work group. You can go to your representation. When it comes across your desk, you can ask a question why are we doing this? How do we know this is good for our students? And just that question can oftentimes be enough to spur a good conversation. So those are kind of my top talking points and things that I hope that you leave today with. So thank you very much. I will pause here for any other questions or comments or complaints, or if I got something wrong, I would love to hear about it today.
I have a whole bunch of complaints, but they're not about you.
Okay.
They're about those situations. This was super fabulous.
Thank you.
It's a pretty small group. So for those of you who have a question or a comment, you could just unmute yourself and share with the group and or Marina.
Do any of you experience these? Was it just me?
I'll share and ask a question. When I worked at Coastline Marina, we did a kind of a customer service audit with our application and onboarding procedure, where we as employees acted as students in various scenarios and went through the steps and documented everything we had to do to get where we wanted to be enrolled in courses for the fall term. And it was maddening how many little things that we, the higher ed and community college folks, put in place that we think are helping, but they're not helping the student. It's just a barrier after barrier preventing them to easily get into courses. But my question related to something somebody said earlier about cost. So is there ever a legitimate reason, like in the laptop device Wi-Fi hotspot area? How do you pay for that? And a more open, paying for 2,000 or 3,000 is a lot harder than paying for 300. So how did you pay for that?
Yeah, so at the time of the pandemic, there were millions of dollars kind of going into the colleges from HERF funding, the emergency funding that came. So that, I think the HERF funding, a lot of colleges ended up not expending it all, and some had to give it back or kind of utilize it in some other way. So I would say that was a great source of that funding. The second source, I think, is SEAP money, and that's student equity money that often lives in student services. It's a great place to go. Another opportunity also is like ZTC funding, if that's related to the work that you're doing. Another place would be like a categorical grant. So for example, if there's strong workforce money and they're supporting laptops or Chromebooks for certain groups of students, that can help you to satisfy those needs, or nursing grant money, or there's adult ed education block grants that colleges have. So there's always a lot of, I don't know, I was always very creative. And as long as I stayed within the rule of the law for the grant, I tried to be flexible and use those funds as much as possible. That's a great question though. Any other suggestions for funding that folks have? Yeah, Inger?
I actually don't have suggestions for funding, but if you ever need another case study to add to your presentation, at Peralta, we used to ask our administrators to fill out the application to go to community colleges and fill out a FAFSA and enroll in colleges at Laney College, classes at Laney College. And we had a number of administrators who came on and worked who said, I gave up, I couldn't do it. And these are people who have master's degrees in education in their family and work at the institution. So, I mean, really.
I love that. I love being like a secret shopper and making administrators go through the process. That's fantastic. It should actually be required of all employment at the community colleges. I had that same experience doing the FAFSA with my son. And it was very complicated. You had to kind of tie it into your IRS tax return and do like multiple logins. It was very unfriendly. Like I said, I work in the system. I'm in the system, and I had so much trouble. And I remembered my own childhood with my parents who didn't speak English. Back then we had a paper FAFSA, and I just did my best. I put it together and I submitted it, but it's virtually impossible for some of our students. And then to make that a requirement is problematic. All right, well, I'm not seeing any other questions. I think we're about 4 minutes out, so I will thank you, and I will fix that misordered slide, darn it, and ensure that there's a copy available for anybody who would like it.
Marina, thank you so much for coming and bringing this presentation to us. This is super helpful. As I said, these are recorded and shared out to all of the registrants later, so I'm sure it will be appreciated by many more than those of us who are here today. So thank you.
Thank you so much, and please stay in touch if there's any other case studies. I do want those for the future. Take care.